So this is the Dodge Dakota I'm working on. It's my own daily beater. I don't have it on video, but I took the axle out of the back, the spring hangers. I cut the rivets on the spring hangers front and back, and then took the axle down and out the back. So the axle is going to sit in here. I took the bump stops out because I'm going to modify them. I think I want them to be just a little bit lower, maybe an inch or so. The axle is going to sit under here. I'm going to have a square tube that comes forward, and there I'll make a bracket that'll sit in up here. Then on the back, that square tube will go under the axle, continue past the axle, and then the airbag will be back here. Something I've thought about with changing it like that is I'm going to have to maybe do some gussets or something from up here going down to the frame and bolting on, and from up there going down to the frame back here and bolting on. My old spring hanger used to be here, and now I'm essentially moving that up to here, so there's that much more frame hanging off the back. If I pull like a heavy trailer with a heavy tongue, I'm worried it's going to kink the frame, you know, right there. So I'm thinking if I tie into this top rail front and back, I can create kind of a bridge, if you will. So when it is heavy on the back, it'll be harder for it to kink. Today's project is to try and build some parts onto this axle. My plan is to switch my little Dakota to air suspension because I want to be able to raise and lower the frame and also level the truck out a little better, especially under conditions where you're pulling a heavy trailer or have the truck loaded down. I want it to be able to ride level. So we're going to be building the left to right. I don't know if you would call it a traction bar. It's not really a traction bar. It's more of a support kind of bar. But basically, it's going to have a support over here that comes up, and then a pipe that I'm going to build that goes across here and attaches to the frame over in here somewhere. Basically, that'll hold the axle so it doesn't shift side to side. There's two parts I've built for it. The first is this square tube, which will sit on top of the axle. So I've cut it out a slight circle here so it receives there. I'll be able to weld all the way around. And then the top I've cross drilled. I've also notched out here so that pipe can twist and turn as the axle kind of goes up and down. It'll do one of these, kind of something like that. I've left some of this front wall in. I'm either going to have a bolt or a pin that goes across through the pipe, so it'll hold it side to side. But I wanted to keep some of this material in the front just to help support that wall a little bit. Make sure it gives it a little bit more down here, where like right in here I think is going to be a stress point when the axle pushes against. So gives it more material. It's hopefully less likely to start cracking right around there. And then the pipe itself, so it'll sit in something like that. We'll have an end down here. I bought some DOM tubing and some brass bushings. So I think I'm just going to cut a piece of that DOM tubing and cut this in a kind of a circle and put that piece of DOM tubing on this way, and then I can put a pin through that. And then the same thing on the other end where the frame's going to be. It'll have a similar bracket. I mean, not that style, but the same kind of receiver. Same deal. Trim this out, put a piece of tube on going this way, and put a pin through it. Ignore that 2x4 right there. Obviously that'll be gone, but basically you get the idea. There's going to be a pivot point right here, so I have to build an end on that rod with a bushing in it to accept a pin through that hole you can see. And then on this end I need to build another connection point on the frame, and then beyond that connection point on the frame itself, I'm gonna have to build a bracket to go on the inside of the frame with a pin through it as well to support that end. So it occurs to me, before I start grinding and welding, I should probably double check this measurement. It's been a few days since I worked on it last, and I just want to make sure that I have that right, that I'm not welding it in the wrong spot and then making a video for you guys of me cutting it off so I can move it over an inch or a half inch. So I'm going to look back through the print and double check my measurements. So I've consulted my print. My print. Ooh, now you're impressed, right? I've consulted my schematic. And basically I've got all my random numbers written down there for measurements. Basically we're trying to find the distance from that the center of that spring mount to the inside here, because I can't measure from the center of the axle to like between here, because that pumpkin sits in there, aka that pumpkin differential. So you can't measure like over top of it to try and transfer that number down. So the easiest is going to be to go from the center of the spring mount here and measure how far in that pipe needs to be to the outside of the pipe. So none of the pipe can be on this side without running into the frame. So the number I've come up with, well, I'll just run it through with you guys. So half the distance between the spring hangers is this 21 5/8, and then the space from center line, well, there's 32 inches between the inside of the channel that is the frame, and then half of that is 16. So then you take this 21 5/8 less this 16, or vice versa, I guess, and you end up with 5 5/8 inches between the center of that spring hanger and the inside. Actually, I'm going to put an arrow there so I know. There we go. So I know that it's between there and there. All right, let's see if we have at least 5 5/8 between the two. So I already have a line marked on the top of the axle for the center of the spring hanger. I've transferred that, and we have almost pretty much right at 6 3/4. So it'll be nice to have a round-ish number, because at some point I'm going to have to measure from here to where the frame is at the other end, to get the total length of that bar going across the top, the finished length of that bar. So yeah, I would say this spot will definitely work. It'll miss the frame by, what did I say? 6 3/4, 5 5/8. So it'll miss the frame by what? Inch and an eighth, 5, 6, or a little bit more. But yeah, it'll be fine. It's close enough to the center of the axle, but it's also pretty much as far out as I can go without worrying about it bumping into the frame. If the axle does some weird twist thing or something, it'll give us some tolerance at the top. So what I figured out is I have a fairly flat surface on the back of my flatbed here, so I can put a 4x4 and a 2x6 modified underneath that mount, and it'll hold the axle flat this way. And then I put another 2x4 and 4x4 under that side, so the axle should be sitting flat end to end. So that should allow me to sit this on top, and it should allow me to use a square. Yeah, there. Should allow me to use a square this way to get the piece of tubing square on this plane, and then also allow me to use the square this way to make sure that I've got it right this direction. So looking at it this way, I don't know if you can tell from over there. I'll slide it a little more, maybe that'll help. Looking at this, it looks like the tube is tilted a little bit this direction. So when I start my first weld, I'm probably going to tack it right in here somewhere, and then either the heat will pull it or I'll bump it just a little bit. Or if I wanted to, I could get in here with a grinder and try and grind a little bit of that off so it sits a little flatter. But I'd rather have some gaps down here all the way around, because I feel like the weld holds better when it's not a real tight fit. When you've got a little bit of space, that weld can kind of get in between the two metals and create like a better connection, essentially. So I'm a fan of the safety third kind of mentality, where it's like project first, breaks are seconds, breaks as in take a break, and then safety is at the end of that. But for this angle grinder tool, safety is first for me. So that includes a pair of leather gloves, and then of course safety glasses, because this thing will throw stuff in your eyes really quickly. And also there's so much power and momentum that if the tool gets caught and kicks back, the gloves will help protect your hand to some degree. It'll still chew through the gloves if it's the right situation, but it at least somewhat protects you. So yeah, here we go. All right. So exciting. So anyway, it's gonna sit on there something like that. I'm gonna square it from this side. Just like so. One thing I did was I extended my mark down so I can see where the edge of the pipe needs to sit on the axle, so I can still get it squared up because I ground off all my marks. We're gonna check it one more time here, just like that, and then this way, like I say, I think it needs to go, the top needs to go about 1/4 inch to the right side, to my right side. All right, so for the tacking, I'm doing a 110 Hobart machine. It's a FluxCore 030 FluxCore wire, no gas. If I had a nice shop or something, MIG welding would be amazing, but unfortunately, I work outside largely. The rustling you're hearing is my 10x10 canopy that I use just to kind of shade the area I'm working in, so I'm not working in the heat of the sun. But anyway, we'll go ahead and tack this thing up. So I'm going to put a tack on this side, just a small tack, and then I'm going to try to tip that square tube a little bit towards the hub down there, and that will allow me to then tack the other side. And I might do a third tack just so it triangulates a little bit, and then my long plan is to weld up with a stick welder, because I just have a 110 wire machine. I don't have a nice 220 or something, so I feel like the stick welder for this situation is going to be a lot stronger, a lot better. So anyway, I'm going to double check my square again before I get started, just to make sure it's where I want it. That looks good. All right, so we'll just put a little tack on this other side. I'm going to come around so I don't stand in front of you while tacking it up. right. Then I usually use one of two type of wire brushes, like full size, you know, traditional wire brush. I bought a pack of these on Amazon, not a sponsor. They're just a small, you know, easy to get in small places. You know, you're putting a weld down in here, you can get it down in there to clean up, or if you try to use the big one, you're going to be fighting yourself. So they're handy. I use them a lot with the wire welder. They're not as strong as the full size, like the hairs on it are a little bit smaller. And then also it's got this flimsy plastic handle, so you never want to grab at the end and try to put any pressure on it without like putting your finger on the back to push it while you're brushing. Or of course, you know, there's the big one, but I don't know. I like the small. Then the flux core, of course, creates splatter. I do have an AC machine at least, so that's better. But for getting the splatter off, the best thing I've found is just a piece of flat stock. I need to clean this up again. But if you cut it square, you'll have a nice square edge there. But then I usually cut this at an angle so that I have kind of a point at that end to help like scrape the slag off. And usually it comes off with the AC machine. It comes off pretty easy. But that gives you kind of an idea. All right, now we need to see if we can get that square tube squared up. And so remember what I said about you weld on one side. As it cools, it's going to draw itself together. And what it's done is pushed the top of that pipe over real close to square, maybe just a hair past. I might lean on it just a little bit while I'm tacking this side, and it'll be dead on. That will make it dead on. So here we go. I'm going to one-hand it. All right. We'll clean that one up. I'm sorry you guys can't see, but it's the same thing that's on the other side, so you saw what I did. You saw what I did over there. I'm just cleaning it up so when I come with the stick welder, you won't have all that slag and garbage on it. My education with welding is it's kind of like painting. The more prep work you put into it, the cleaner you make your surface and whatever, the better your weld's going to be. So I'm going to double check it one more time before I put the heavy stick to it, just to make sure it is where I want it. I mean, that's dead on. As long as it stays, which I think I put enough tack, it's not going to go anywhere. I think I'll do one of the sides first, and then I'm probably going to change the orientation of the axle itself to do these bottom ones, so I'm not doing overhead, because I can do overhead, but it's not fun, so make life easier for myself. Hopefully, through the magic of video editing, you won't have realized that I just spent the last 25 minutes hunting for welding rods for my stick welder. They are in my shop somewhere. So a quick glance in my workshop. It's like, I don't know why I can't find anything in here. Huh. Don't know where they went, but fortunately I had the foresight to buy a new box of welding rods. These right here. They're a 10-pound box of Hobart 70/18s, 1/8 inch. Should be fine. Anyone that's done any stick welding, sorry, my dogs are being obnoxious. What? Enough. Well, there's nobody there. You're not barking at anything. Anyway, anyone who's had the joy of stick welding knows the true joy of welding with the new box of rods. So it just makes such a better weld. Just does a better job. So we're going to open these up. So what I try to do, yeah, there's a cat or something there barking at. I don't know. Sorry, they're being obnoxious. Please ignore. So what I try to do is buy in larger quantities, like this 10-pound box, and I'll take out a section of them and put them in a new device I purchased recently, welding rod, storage tube or whatever, I don't know what the term is. It's got an O-ring in it, so it actually seals, presumably seals airtight. So we're going to take out a couple handfuls, I think, out of there. Kind of feed them in. So when I'm not using it, I'll be able to close these off, and that'll stay tight, hopefully. These I won't have to get back in for a while, so I'm going to retape that seal. So the reason new rods are nice to weld with is because they're still nice and dry, because they're coming from the factory sealed. The humidity itself and the moisture in the air through humidity will get into the rods and dampen the flux coating on the outside enough that when you weld, it still welds fine. You can use a somewhat moist welding rod and it'll still put two pieces of metal together, but afterwards it looks kind of rough. Like once you chip the slag off, your weld just doesn't look very nice. So the drier you keep them, the better. So all right, hopefully you guys can see. I mean, you're just going to see really bright welding light. I always pick on folks recording welding, but now here I am doing it, so whatever. Ooh, look at that center part. Whew. Don't pay any attention to that corner. You don't worry about that. Well, there you have it. Pretty satisfied with how it turned out. I put a coat of rattle can paint on it for now. Probably do the heavier paint. The axle I painted with Rust-Oleum, but I imagine once I get it down under the truck, it's going to have more scuffs and scratches. That'll probably be a good time to come back and give it, part of it a second coat, touch up some spots and so on. But yeah, I think it turned out well. Let me run you guys in a little closer. Dun, dun, dun. Like, those welds look pretty good, if I do say so myself. I'm pretty satisfied. I didn't run them over with the grinder afterwards, so I think it worked out great. So after I painted this up, it occurred to me that this square tube is essentially sealed at the bottom, and I don't want it to completely fill with water because I'm sure it's going to get water in it. So I went ahead and drilled a weep hole. I think it's 3/8 inch, on this side and on the other side too, so that the water has somewhere to go. In hindsight, if I was to do it over again, I probably would notch this out. That way it has a space for water to get in and out of there and not like fill the whole thing up. So, random thoughts. So next is going to be this pipe. Essentially we need to put ends on it that we can put a pin through. So one end will attach to the bracket on the top of the axle that we just put together. The other end will attach to a bracket that's going to mount on the inside of the frame on my pickup. So what I've got is this 1/4 inch wall DOM tube that's 3/4 inside and what is that, 1.25 inches outside. I don't want to lie to you. Yeah, 1.25 inches outside. So one thing of note, this is the first time I've ever bought DOM tubing. The inside measurement is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/32 narrower than 3/4. So I'm not sure with DOM tubing if they're just going accurate on the outside and then the inside is approximate, or if I just bought it from someone who just didn't care about tolerance or whatever. But anyway, we're going to cut a piece of this off and then we're going to notch this back and try to weld it in. And the challenge is going to be to get this end straight and square with the whole mechanism. So here we go. Well, I cut off the end of my DOM tube, managed to get a pretty square cut. I don't have a chop saw or anything like that, so I just use a piece of paper, wrap it around and make sure the edges are even, then mark it and cut it from that point. Should be close enough for what I'm doing. Then I marked on the pipe here where I decided to cross drill the pipe, and then I'll probably cut the pipe down to about half of the circumference of this cross piece or whatever, bushing, I guess you'd kind of look at it. So I marked on this side, I put a center punch on there, and then I marked directly on the other side and put a center punch there. I don't really trust my drill press to drill square enough to like just drill straight through. So I'm going to drill one side, then I'm going to flip it and drill the other. And it's going to be in a 4-step process. I've got a 1/4 inch bit, I've got a 1/2 inch bit, and I've got a 1 inch bit. Then I've got a 1 1/4, which is the size of that tube. So we're going to step it up, so to speak. Also, we're going to adjust this table. So it's a cheap drill press, but I like it. It does a good job. I don't have any complaints. Let's see here. I'm gonna go back down just a little. Tighten her up right there. I'm gonna have to get the right blocks for this end so that it actually sits flat in there. So hang on. Well, drilling didn't work out too terribly great. Let me see if I can get it to focus here. Yeah. I think part of my problem is I'm using a twist drill to cross drill a twist type drill bit to cross drill the hole. And I think what I really need is more of like a hole cutter, hole saw, or whatever you want to call it. But basically I went enough that I can kind of get the outline of what I'm going to need. So I'm going to cut down the center here and get rid of that piece, and then I'm going to come in with my angle grinder and kind of just clean up those edges and get it where this fits in there relatively close. I mean, we're going to be welding it on. If there's some gaps, we can close them up. I just want it to be kind of close, and it's not a huge deal if it's, you know, the hole goes through a little high or a little low or whatever. The big thing is we're going to want to make sure we get it square this way, so it's not like crooked. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't. That's really all I need. Well, it'll do the job I need, I guess is the way to say it. Here's what I ended up with on the end of that. Let me bring it up where you can see a little bit better. I just took the angle grinder, kind of cut the end off and touched up the walls. So this will sit in there like so. I mean, it's got a little gap there, but nothing that can't be closed up, you know. The big thing, like I said, is making sure it's in there square, so it's not, so this piece at the end isn't like cockeyed. So we'll end up tacking one side and then making adjustments on the other to tip it out or whatever, but we'll see here in a minute. So here's what I came up with for the jig, I'll call it, to try and make sure I'm getting this collar, this sleeve rather, welded on square. First I used my work table, and over here I measured 10 inches and made a mark, and I measured 10 inches and made a mark, and then I put my 2-foot square on the bottom, kind of like this. And of course the pipe's in the way now, but I made a mark here and made a line here, which is that line, so that I have something to eyeball to get it square. Because with it all being pipe and not square tube, it's kind of hard to translate your mark here onto the surface. So let me zoom in. All right, so there's my 2 marks on the length of the pipe. Let me lean over. You'll see I put arrows, so the point of the arrow is the 10 inches. So when you look down the length of the pipe, I'll lean you a little more. You can see we got a pretty straight, you know, it's pretty easy to get that pipe straight with this side of the bed. And so then our lower mark will also be right. I also used these fancy magnets, welding magnets, to do it. Let me lean you back here a little. You can see both of them. They seem to be great as far as holding the pipe. You can roll the pipe away and they're not going to move, like they're stuck to the bed, the table, way better than they're stuck to the pipe. So then that collar will sit, of course, in this end down here, and I've made that line across there for square, so that'll sit in something like that. Let me swing you up, and then you can kind of eyeball what I'm seeing. So like right there, you can see it's like, that's it sitting flat in the groove, and it's pretty much dead on. So I'm not sure how I managed that, but good job. The only thing left to do is find the center line, or how much it's going to stick out on either side. So I weld it to that side or that side, but I think I can pretty much just put it in there and weld it and call it good. I went ahead and located the top center of the pipe on that black line, and then I located the center of this sleeve with that silver line. And my plan is to hold it lined up and then just tack it along this edge right here, and then I'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Let me turn my welder on. Da-da-da. And then once it's tacked up, I'll probably try to stick weld it again. I think I like that idea. So, here we go. All right. Let's see, we're gonna have to do something with that ground clamp. Just like so. Yeah, just like so. And look to see if we're still square. Pulled away a little bit. Give it a little tappy. See if it decides to stay in there. I think the tolerance is still close enough. We'll tack this side. I'm just going to pull on it a little bit when I tack it. Whew, doesn't take long to get toasty. All right, we'll clean that up, and then we can bust out the stick. Jump back to stick welder. Yep, that's what I was trying to do. All right, now that the end's welded up, I just wanted to give you one more peek. Those arrows, hopefully you can see that far away one, right about there. And then down here, you can kind of see, let's see if I can lean you in here. I mean, that is really, really, really close. Like, I mean, I'm actually pretty proud of that, so. Yeah, good job. It's the next day here, and our task is going to be to make the sleeve that goes on the end to put the pin through. But first, we're going to make the bracket that goes on the frame that this will receive into and go through. The pin will go through. So I've drawn up some plans. Air quotes, plans. The side view gonna look something like this. Over here we'll have we'll start here. Truck frame, and then the bracket itself will be made out of this, what'll end up being angle iron. And of course I got some dimensions. The angle is 2 1/8. That's actually not right, that's 2 1/4, because I get a lot of my steel from the scrap yard, and I had this piece that's perfect for it, but it's 2 1/8 on one side and 2 1/4 on the other. But anyway, neither here nor there. And then there will be bolts that go through here and through this piece of plate that I'm going to put on the back. It's actually going to be flat stock, 1/4 inch by 2, I'm thinking. We'll see what I have. And then of course, here we're going to be 3 inches tall, and here's that pipe coming in, and then of course that bushing on the end. And here's the dimensions. We're going to drill a 5/8 hole because the pin's going to be 5/8. Next page. Cooperate here. All right, so next page, we've got our top view. So like here's the length of the frame. Now it doesn't show that top flange because that top flange is going to come out here somewhere. I just didn't see the need to add it. Here's those 2 by 1/4. I wrote it down here. 2 inches by 3 inches, 1/4 inch thick, flat stock, and then in here now you can see those pieces of angle, and I've got it marked 2 1/8 this way and then 2 1/4 this way, because I wanted a little extra space between the back of this bushing and the frame itself to make sure I can push this out as far as possible. Then of course you got 5/8 pin going through, or bolt, I'm not really sure yet. And then I'm going to do 1/2 inch this direction, but I'm going to do 2 of them, so it will be so this isn't completely correct, but there will be 1 bolt here and 1 bolt here, so 2 1/2 inch bolts, then switching to 1 5/8 pin for here, so that this can rotate. I've got a 1/4 inch angle, I already said, and then an estimated overall build of 7 1/4 inches. I've estimated that because there's going to be bushings that go in here, they're flange style, and this is going to be the same width as the other end of the post, or the other end of the pipe, the one that's down there on the axle, right there. And the idea is I can flip the pipe around if I ever have to take it off or build another one, or hey, maybe it's not strong enough and it bends and I have to build a new one. It's interchangeable, I guess. And then I have the design and layout for the 2 pieces of angle, and that'd be up here, 2 pieces of flat stock down here, and I just drew it on a flat plane and put a 90-degree reminder there. And my holes are going to be those 2 1/2 inch, and then there's going to be 1 5/8, and of course I have my dimensions here for where those are placed. I also put the space between. I might end up, these measurements match for these 2 measurements. I might end up drilling either the flat stock or these up here instead of 1/2 inch. I might drill one side or the other up a little bit, maybe a 1/16. I use a drill press, but I'm not like dead on sometimes, so that would give me a little tolerance if the space between these holes is a 32nd off, or here maybe we're a 64th closer here and a 64th wider here. It'll give me enough tolerance that it won't have to be dead on. So that's the basic layout. Now we just have to get to it. As they say, nothing to it but to do it. That's a Chucky 2009 shout out. So I took the liberty of cleaning those pieces up. Got the 2 angles. I went ahead and got them marked up. See, I transferred those marks to the inside, so I'll be able to put them on the drill press, just like so. And then I went ahead and cut up a couple pieces of 1/4 inch flat stock, mark those as well. I just needed to use my punch, get me a little spot where it'll actually go in, and then these should sit back to back like so, with the frame here in between and 2 bolts going through. No dogs outside in the yard today. They're free to go in and out. We have a room in the back of the house that they stay in, and it's got a mud flap. It's got a dog door made out of a mud flap. So they can go in and out on their own. But I'm guessing it's mid-morning here, so they're probably taking their mid-morning nap, which doesn't sound like a terrible idea, to be honest. But we're going to try and get some work done. Well, there's the finished product. Pretty happy with how it turned out. I used the angle grinder to clean off those burrs a little bit. It's a lot better. And same on this piece. So we got our half inch, and then the frame will get sandwiched between. This will sit up like so, and then our pipe will be back here, and then our side-to-side post or pipe will be going this way. So I'll show you quick here what I was talking about with tolerance. So I'm gonna peek under the camera here to do this. You can see maybe that there's, even with that 16th, it's like right there. I'm going to show you one more thing that I didn't think about ahead of time. Maybe you guys did, but doing the 5/8 hole one direction and 2 1/2 inch the other way, I was able to make it where my clearances will actually fit. Where, you know, if I had put 1 and 1, they'd have been running into each other this way. But actually it worked out perfect. Like there's enough room I can get in there to tighten, slide. I mean, this is an extreme example. I'm hoping I won't have that much thread showing on both of these, but there's still plenty of room if I would have decided to do that, you know? So something to think about. I should have thought of that ahead of time, but hey, you miss stuff once in a while. Thought I'd give you guys a quick shot of what the bracket looks like finished. It'll more or less be like that. The frame will sit between right here, and then of course bolts holding it together, and then it'll be pinned this way. I'll have bushings. I've got brass bushings that are going to go in this end. Now I just need to find the distance, and I need to put another one of these links on the other end of the pipe. So I've been doing some math and drawing some ideas up, and here's what I kind of came up with. Well, you can see that. So our piece on the axle is mounted right there, and here's our lower spring hanger. So this is the axle across here, and the distance from the center of that spring hanger to the center line that goes all the way up is 21 5/8. Up here we've got our 2 frame rails right over here. They're channel, obviously. One number to keep in mind is this 1.5 inch, because we're going to want a center line here on that hole measured all the way over to this inside of this frame right here. So what we've ended up with is basically what I've done is I've knocked this complete number between the spring hangers in half, 21 5/8, and then off of that I've taken this 6 3/4, which is between there, and this 1.5 inch, which is between there, which comes up to 7 8 1/4, and I've taken that, I got it written down here. I've got that 8 1/4, and I've subtracted that from the 21 5/8, come up with 13 3/8. So that's the distance from our center hole to the center line of the machine. And then over here I've got an overall width between the frame rails, 37.5 divided by 2, 18 3/4. So I know the length of my bar from all the way on the frame rail to the center of this hole is going to be this 18 3/4 plus this 13 3/8, which I thought I wrote on here somewhere. That's weird. I guess I didn't. Anyway, it comes up to 32 1/8. Then our bracket on that end of the pipe is going to have some space between the center hole and the outside of the frame, or the inside of the frame. I came up with 1.25 inch of space between there. So now we need to subtract that 1.25 inch to the center of that hole off of this 32 1/8. That comes up to a total length of 30 7/8 inches from the center hole on that end, right in there, to the center hole on that end that we're going to build right down there. So yeah, that gives us an idea of total length. Now just need to get working on it and put the other end on and see if it fits. All right, so I'm working on this other end, and I got it all cut out and ready to put together. This one's a little bit more difficult. I have the same center mark right there and center on there, so I know where I'm at this way. Then I did the same marks on the side of the pipe and square mark here, so I can square it this way. But there's one more element, and that is this way. So I want that end and this end to both be on the same flat plane with each other. So let me drop you down here. All right, so I'll be able to line up this mark and this mark on the top, and I'll be able to go square with that line. You can't really see, but a line along the bed. But I think what I'm going to do is just kind of eyeball this gap underneath. Or maybe I'll get a piece of metal or something and stick in there. We'll see. I'm going to tack it up on one side, and then I can do little minor adjustments as long as I tack in the right spot. The far end, all the way, down there, is sitting on a little board and then flat on the bed. So that end should be flat with the surface of the bed, and this end should be flat once I'm done. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to tack it up. All right, here's it tacked up. I'm going to lean you in so you can see that line, see where it's square. Look at that. That's pretty much dead on. Let me slide you down and you can look under the bottom. There's the bottom. You'll be able to see that on this side doesn't slide under there. It catches by just a bit. And on this side, you probably can't see it from over there, but the gap between the two is really close. Now I'm assuming the distance of this is flat as well, but if not, it should be close enough for what I'm doing. If one end's a little bit turned this way or that way, it's not a huge deal. I plan on putting that bracket on this end that goes against the frame, and then putting it on the whole assembly on the axle, and then marking on the frame where I'm going to drill. So if it is a little bit, tipped, a degree or something, it's not the end of the world. It'll be fine. Here we have the finished product. Don't look too closely at my welds. That galvanized whatever gets in the weld, it looks kind of rough. There's some spots that aren't too bad. I don't know how well you can see on the camera, but it's welded. Is it pretty? No, but it's strong. It's not going anywhere. So we've run into an unplanned problem. This brake line comes up this side of the frame, and then it's welded on like a bracket that's going to get in the way of that square tube coming up. So I'm going to have to rethink that. I think I'm going to move it back a little, maybe make a new bracket, because that line goes, I can show you here, that line goes down to here, and it goes to that brake cylinder and then back to this brake cylinder. But not a big deal. I'm gonna show you from the other side, it's easier to see. There you go, hopefully you can kind of see it. Sorry, the lighting's kind of bad. That brake line runs up here and then out here, and then that bracket is right in there. Trying to see if it's focused actually. Anyway, hopefully you can see something. Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm always surprised when I stumble upon a YouTube creator who has millions of subscribers and has been producing videos for years, completely unknown to me. I would like to help correct this issue by giving some of my favorite creators a shout out during my videos. To that end, I would like to take this opportunity to spotlight one of my fellow YouTube creators, someone I personally subscribe to. If you find my content interesting, please consider going down to the video's description and follow the link I have placed there. The link will take you to today's chosen creator. But for now, please stay tuned for any bloopers related to this video. Thank you, everyone. Wow, I'm having a heck of a time. Just, oh, yep, shock you. All right, I'm gonna put together a couple pieces of test material to weld on. Dun-dun-dun. Where is it? There it is. So you can see, like, look at that first, like, 2/3 on the left, and then look at that part on the right. That's like a real weld on the right. That left 2/3 looks like, man, looks like somebody needs to go back to school or something.